I've noticed a growing trend of brutal honesty videos here on YouTube that is spreading a dangerous mindset that can be pretty damaging to your well-being. I wanted to talk about it and if you should trust people like me on social media. To start, I need to explain what this growing trend even is. Recently, creators like myself are being rewarded on this platform for being more honest than, I guess, your average creator. For me, I'm specifically sharing my personal development journey of quitting my job and everything that comes with being a 30-year-old millennial. My goal here is to be honest about my opinions that may or may not be controversial because I think it's important to talk about them rather than keeping it hidden away behind closed doors. For whatever reason, people like these videos and I've been getting a lot more views and subscribers than normal. Because of this, obviously opportunists are going to take notice of this growing trend. So I'm seeing an influx of creators who are starting to open up about how they weren't really real with their audiences before, but now they're starting to be honest and want to share their personal struggles. It's kind of a weird feeling for me because I was punished for sharing my thoughts for the past few years. I was regularly canceled and mocked for having opinions that nobody wanted to say out loud. It wasn't until recently that the things I'm saying started resonating with people. So when all of a sudden people are getting rewarded for it rather than getting hate for it, I'm seeing a lot of people hopping onto what they think is a trend. For example, people who never really swore in their videos before are suddenly swearing for the first time ever. Or they're being brutally honest about some of their flaws. At least some of the more tame, acceptable flaws, because God forbid people actually dislike you by the end of your video. The so-called flaws end up sounding kind of like a humble brag, something you would say in an interview, for example, when they ask you, name one weakness that you have. And then you say, well, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, which means I will get the job done really well, but it might take a little bit more time. When I see this happening, it kind of feels like people are stereotyping personalities like mine and wearing it like a Halloween costume, which is really convenient because they can take off the costume whenever they like. I can't, because this is just who I am, even when the internet decides they don't like me anymore. But at the end of the day, this is just how the internet is, whether I like it or not. Plus, I think creators being more honest in the long run is a really good thing, whether or not there are ulterior motives behind why they're being honest. What actually bothers me about all this is the way it feels like creators are covertly attacking each other's authenticity. They're vaguely pointing fingers at each other and accusing each other of being fake in an attempt to make themselves be more real. They make the argument that no one can truly be honest on the internet because they themselves struggled to be honest before. They believe that no one can truly portray themselves to be who they really are online. After all, you're only getting a small snippet of who we are with these YouTube videos. They say if anyone tells you they really are being honest, that you're being lied to. To them, it's just another trend in the life cycle of social media. It all feels really zero-sum gamey to me, and I don't really like that creators have this tendency to attack each other to climb to the top. This way of thinking is incredibly damaging to not only you, the audience member, but in my opinion, society as a whole. To explain why, I have to go into detail about who I am and why I go to extreme lengths to be authentically myself in regards to the idea that creators like me can't show you who I actually am in real life because you're watching me through a very small 10-15 minute video. I think that logic is faulty because even in real life, most people don't see who I really am. Most of you are not going to see me without makeup on or at home being a bum. Who I am in front of the camera is who I really am. This isn't an act, I'm not a character. Your opinion of me may be wrong or a shallow version of who I actually am, but it's still me, just like how other people's opinion of me in real life could also be wrong. It's the same thing. Some people can go to great lengths to hide who they really are in real life too. Just because I'm in front of a camera and I'm not talking to you in real life, there's not that much of a difference other than, yes, there is more opportunity to lie to you and create a persona. I've never been much of a likable person. I was bullied a lot as a kid, and even though I hated my bullies for doing it. There's no excuse for bullying anyone. I kind of understood why I was bullied. I'm not trying to be a victim blamer here, but everyone who's ever been bullied has to admit that I made it easy for them to target me because I never really learned how to be a people pleaser. I was a bit of a tomboy, and my parents would dress me up in discount clothes from Chinatown or thrifted clothes from Ross before thrifting clothes was popular. I really didn't mind it because I was kind of a dreamy, spacey kid who wanted to be left alone so I can draw or read. The last thing on my mind was fashion. So when people would inevitably make fun of the way I looked or acted, I thought, well, how am I supposed to act? This is who I am. I can't change that. I don't really have a problem with myself. That is a you problem, not really a me problem. In fact, I was actually punished for trying to learn how to be a people pleaser. Once everyone knew how strange I was, it was probably really cringy to watch me attempt to be like everyone else. I wasn't going to stop making art, and I didn't really have the ability to dress better as a child, so I was bullied even harder. So little baby Janet basically decided, I can't change who I am. I'm also a terrible actor, so I guess I'm just gonna have to live with people disliking me for the rest of my life. I ended up growing up as that one person that doesn't know how to filter out their thoughts when they speak. Sometimes people are going to think I'm naive or dumb because I'm not going to pretend to be smarter than I am, especially because I think people find out eventually, and then you look even dumber. Other times, people think I'm really judgmental and mean because I don't know how to hold back my criticism. It took me a really long time to figure out that when people ask for criticism, they're actually looking for compliments. For example, when girls say, oh my god, my hair looks really ugly, you're not supposed to judge whether or not their hair really does look really ugly. You're supposed to either compliment them or, for whatever reason, insult yourself to be more relatable, I guess. I especially have a hard time being a woman because girls just have more of this kind of stuff. So when I was younger, instead of doing the normal thing of going, no, your hair is beautiful or whatever, I would say something like, yeah, it does look kind of bad. Here's some advice to make it look better. Because I'm genuinely trying to be helpful. I didn't realize how rude it actually sounds. Gee, I wonder why no one wants to be friends with you, Janet. This is why I tend to get along better with men rather than women, because they just think I'm dumb, whereas women just think I'm a cunt. This is also not me trying to be not like the other girls, because I genuinely would love female friendships. I just never got that operating system installed in me, so I don't know how to communicate. Combine this with how bad I am at reading emotions in real time. I constantly shoot myself in the foot with relationships. I can't tell you how many people I've accidentally made cry when critiquing their art at conventions and in college. My husband Vincent had to explain to me after the fact that when someone asks you to critique their art portfolio, they're not literally asking how to get better. They just want to be reassured that they can get hired or they're good. And when he explains these things to me, I immediately feel awful and I want to dig a hole and bury myself into it. I am incapable of deciphering what people actually mean when they say things. The only reason why I'm better at conversing with people now is because I am older and I filed away thousands of conversations that have went wrong. And now I know when people say this, they actually mean that. But when I encounter a new type of conversation, I almost guarantee you I'm going to offend someone on accident. Long story short, I'm that asshole who thinks they're a good person. Even though I believe my intentions are good, people usually think the worst of me. There were times in my life where I did wish I could be liked. I literally just can't. And you might think because I'm so used to it, it doesn't hurt me, but it does. Still, it's especially bad when people intentionally twist my words, which tends to happen a lot on social media. Though I do think that's low-hanging fruit because I can make myself look bad all by myself. A common criticism when I share these experiences with other people, especially extroverts, is, well, then why don't you change? Or why don't you just tell people what they want to hear? I think changing who someone is the worst thing you can do to someone's mind. I love who I am, and I'm proud to be me. The good parts and the bad parts. Suggesting to change who I am would mean to get rid of the person who just wants to be helpful and thoughtful. It suggests that there's something wrong for being that way. That who I am deep down inside is wrong and shouldn't exist. When you tell someone that they shouldn't exist, or you get them to believe that there's something inherently wrong with them, what do you think happens? Depression? stress, other psychological problems that eventually lead to physical health problems. And to add to that, to just say what other people want to hear, to me is the same as lying about what I actually think. I believe my thoughts and my opinions are an extension of who I am. So denying my opinions is the same to me as telling me that I don't deserve to exist. It feels like my body is on fire and I want to jump out of my skin when I'm being dishonest about how I actually feel, because it feels like I'm rejecting who I really am. And all for what? To make people who would actually dislike me if they knew who I really was like me for a split second? In order to make my life slightly easier momentarily, I have to feel like my skin is on fire? I would rather not, which is why I've accepted this about myself a long time ago, and I assumed that I was going to die alone. Then came Vincent, the complete opposite of me. Before meeting me, he was the ultimate people pleaser. He is an expert at reading between the lines and figuring out what you want him to say or do to make you happy. That makes him an excellent employee and friend, but that also makes him pretty manipulative. He had no qualms about lying for convenience. For example, when we first started dating, he would lie about simple things like already watching a movie before watching it with me. He did this because he wanted to watch the movie I wanted to watch. But when I found out, I got really mad at him, not because he watched the movie before me, but because he lied about something so inconsequential. When I asked him why he lied about things like that, he basically told me everyone does it, and in a way he's right. It's normal to compliment someone who's criticizing themselves. It's typically a nice thing to do, to just say what other people want to hear so that you can soothe their insecurities. But the problem with that, and the problem that I see with a lot of content creators on YouTube believing that this is normal, is that it goes further than that. He believed that because everyone is like this, everyone's kind of manipulative, it's okay to use this manipulative behavior in all aspects of life to kind of get one over on people or to get ahead. For example, if he could get people to think he's such a great, kind person, he can get away with being a shitty one. All he had to do was say all the right things, give them a great big smile, and assume comforting, relatable body language. And just like that, he was able to manipulate people into giving him whatever he wanted. College advisors would approve things they didn't for me. He was a lot better at convincing people to buy our products at conventions than I was. And he thought if he wasn't doing this, someone else was. If everyone is taking advantage of each other, why be the one idiot who gets left behind? Essentially, his worldview is that everyone is fundamentally bad. He didn't believe I was as honest as I was portraying myself. And on my end, as much as I knew being a people pleaser is his default, I could also see how exhausted it made him. I could clearly see how being dishonest really weighs on a person. I watched him having to keep up appearances because every lie you tell, you have to keep track of it in your mind. And it becomes really complicated when you develop an entire persona, a mask you have to wear in front of people, and then you come home and that's the only time you get to take it off. And when you get really tired, you start slipping up a little bit and the seams of who you actually are start to show. People start believing that you're actually kind of a dishonest person. And it meant he could never really be himself around anybody. And it also helped him morally justify doing bad things to people. If other people were vain, he could be vain. If he assumed other people were talking shit, he was gonna talk shit too. Nothing is off limits when you believe the world is full of bad people. I, on the other hand, wouldn't really allow him to put on his charismatic costume because I would get really mad at him for doing it. He would constantly lie and try to figure out the person I wanted him to be, and he didn't realize that I just wanted him to be himself. I was willing to accept the good and the bad parts of his personality. I just wanted what was real. And for the longest time, he thought I was the most sophisticated, manipulative liar ever, and he was just waiting for me to slip up and show my dishonest face. And of course it never happened, because over time, he watched me mess up relationships with people over and over and over again. He would cringe at my complete inability to read normal everyday interactions and end up making people think I'm rude and inconsiderate. He had the tendency to try to force me to be more extroverted than I'm capable of by bringing me to parties with coworkers, and I'd inevitably want to leave early, making everyone think I'm rude or such a downer. He would get so frustrated that I couldn't bring myself to socialize and play the Hollywood game like everybody else. And he would always end up saying, "Why can't you be a normal human?" And that would really hurt me because all I could say to that is, "Don't you think I would if I could?" My honesty eventually made him feel pretty bad about himself because he realized that his negative worldview of people made him harbor resentment for people. He got tired of thinking this is a dog-eat-dog world and everyone was out to get him. And I showed him that there are other options to people-pleasing. As much as he hated me fucking up social interactions, he realized that there are some merits to being disliked. The experience of watching your partner get canceled over and over again while still standing their ground, I think proves the strength of my character. And there's a certain beauty to the fact that regardless of everything that has happened to me, that there were still people that liked me. We also joke that I'm his best tool for figuring out if someone is shady or not, because people tend to have a really visceral reaction to my personality. There are some people who don't know anything about me, but listen to me speak for a few seconds, and they absolutely hate me and want me to stop existing. He says those are the people he knows to avoid because they dislike how secure I am, because it highlights how insecure they are. All this is just to say that when you believe everyone is lying to you, you develop this worldview that it's okay to lie to others too. It makes you comfortable to be a bad person. You start making up excuses to excuse all types of bad behavior just because you think other people are doing it to you. And especially as a creative, it makes you an unoriginal person because you end up parroting what other people want you to say. Just look at Hollywood and how everyone is so afraid of having a controversial opinion about a movie. Now that I'm no longer in it, I can say whatever I want regardless of what people think. That was not the case when I was working because there was so much societal pressure to say what your art director or director wants to hear so that you can get that next job. So it's no wonder we keep getting movies that risk nothing and say nothing. So we're so bored, we all just go on social media instead. Whereas the risk involved in being authentically yourself is pretty obvious. People won't like you. And it also means once the trend of being brutally honest ends, I'm probably going to get canceled over and over and over again until I remove myself from the internet. I'm not going to stop being myself just because it's convenient. I couldn't do it even if I wanted to. And for me, my experience with all this is that it can be very lonely. A people pleaser worries that people are secretly out to get them. Meanwhile, I'm literally being attacked and misunderstood all the time. Sometimes I get lucky and a bunch of weirdos like you like me for some reason. And because I am the way I am, I actually have the opposite worldview of Vincent. I accidentally assume everyone else is exactly like me, which means I end up believing in the best in people. I believe that people are inherently kind and honest to each other, only if you believe that they are capable of it. We are communal creatures, and we need the kindness of others in order to survive and be happy. A rising tide lifts all ships, so instead of criticizing each other's flavor of honesty, there's so much opportunity out there to learn and help each other.